Hello and welcome to the Kubernetes Case Files commentary. I'm your host, Glen Simon, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Katarina Brookfield and Mike Foley, both technical marketing architects for VMware. The Kubernetes Case Files is a kind of a more fun way to talk about app modernization in the context of a fictional detective story. The story plays out over a series of episodes, and I believe we're on episode number 7. So in our latest episode, the detective finally reveals that, in fact, everyone is at fault to some degree, but more importantly, everyone has a part to play in the solution. But a key part of this is collaboration. So what are some of the pitfalls that can occur when infrastructure and app dev teams don't collaborate effectively?
I think one of the main differences is the mindset, again, between the two teams. Traditionally, the infrastructure teams want to take their time to build the environment, do it properly, do nice naming conventions and policies. But the application development is a very rapid and fast process. So the app dev teams really want to have that flexible option of just spinning up environments, do quick tests, and then tearing them down. And if they would traditionally have to ask the VI admins or the infrastructure architects to build these environments, they would probably have to open a ticket. This would have to be logged in a process. So it's a very long and time-consuming process, and it takes away that rapid speed that the app devs traditionally need.
Yeah, I think one of the main difficulties is that traditionally IT doesn't move as fast as the development environment. Right? Development environments using the latest and greatest tools that haven't been reviewed by security. They're using, because of the slowness of getting stuff from IT or IT being able to respond to their needs, what we are typically finding is a lot of shadow IT is happening, and developers are doing a lot of their development on shadow IT. And that's where, all of the rules are thrown out the door. And that's where the business, from a business standpoint, can see some serious misgivings as to, is this a good way to run our business?
Is it partly, something to do with sort of the nature of each of these teams, that one of the app dev side, they're kind of more, I guess, experimental, kind of like what you said, they're running different, maybe they're running more, newer versions of various tools and application environments that are not kind of fully tested, right? As we all know from the IT point of view, they don't, that's the kinds of things that may affect things like availability, security, and those types of things.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is IT is typically more conservative because they're probably a little bit more aligned with the business, and their goal is uptime, consistency, meeting compliance objectives, ensuring things are backed up, and so forth. So that's what their goals are. Whereas the goals from the app dev team is get the code out, get the code out, get the code out.
Yes, and just to tie into that, I also think the app devs don't really care where the application is running. They just want to code. They want to create the application. And part of that process is completely different processes to what infrastructure would use. So if we look at DevOps practices like continuous integration and continuous development, the app devs are running their pipelines to move their code from test to staging to production environments very quickly, because they want to be doing small changes. They want to be integrating this. There are different principles where they can, maybe change a bit of code or bit of application just for a small percentage of users. And this is, again, very rapid, very quick, and they want to see the results very quickly. And the infrastructure side, I don't think at this point is able to keep up with those requests, because again, if we tie it back, if every time they want to make this change, they would have to go through the ticketing process and ask for a change to be made on the back end, it would just take way too long time. So
yeah, the ticketing process really adds a big roadblock or speed bump in the way of everyone getting things done.
And what about I've heard that sometimes, it can be difficult to move, to move these apps into production, right? You've got, maybe in the development world, you can mature and iterate on your applications very quickly, but then once you kind of zero in on what you want to take to production, it stumbles a bit. Is that, I've heard that's kind of an issue as well. Is that part of this as well?
It definitely is. I think the main reason for that is that test environments are usually very open, just environments that are built just for the purpose of running the application, but not necessarily looking at security and things like that. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah. Testing environments might be using code that hasn't gone through a security review, right? Testing environments might be using passwords that are in clear text somewhere in the under the auspices of, well, we just need to get that done. We'll fix that when we go to production. And then typically everything, the scramble to go to production, things drop off the truck. And the things that drop off the truck are, wait a minute, do we have anything that's any passwords that are in clear text? Or did we change all of that to use the production level credential manager? Oh, well, let's just push it out. We'll fix it later. And you've now created a major threat to the business. So.
All right, well, let's shift gears and talk about solutions now. Is there, are there solutions to these types of collaboration problems?
Absolutely. So on one hand, you have vSphere, which is tried and tested and well documented, well understood on how to run workloads, where workload is defined as virtual machines. But with vSphere with Tanzu, you now bring in the capability to run Kubernetes workloads in addition to your virtual machine workloads. And now I can create, as a vSphere admin, I can create a namespace for a development team or a developer and say, here's your allotment of resources, CPU, disk, etc., and go forth and go use your existing tools, because you have full Kubernetes access. So if you want to go ahead and try something new, want to use untested code to check and see if it works, you can do that. But you're doing that in an environment where I've set up some safeguards around that sandbox that I like to call a namespace. Kat?
Yeah, also, so as we said, the app developers don't really care about where the application is running. So what we're doing with vSphere Tanzu is giving them the opportunity to use their tools that they are familiar with to deploy their workloads, but the workloads then land on vSphere that, as Mike has mentioned, are controlled by the VA admin. So it, as Mike mentioned, the quota, so this is the CPU, this is the memory you can use, but also policies. What storage does this land on? What networks does this connect to? All of these controls are now set by the VA admin, and the app developers don't have to worry about that because they still use the tools that they are familiar with and that they want to use, more importantly. So I think that that's a great concept, because it really, as we talked about before, where they would have to go and open tickets to get this done, now it can be done seamlessly. The policies are set by the VI admin, the infrastructure is ready, and the app developer just deploys applications as they want.
Yeah, I think the whole point around seamless, if we could just quickly touch on that, is that I'm afraid that folks are going to go, okay, you said it's seamless, but how is it seamless? When you set up vSphere with Tanzu, you are essentially building a Kubernetes environment for your developers to use. So they are using the kubectl command line, and in there they can do a kubectl create an ingress network. Whereas before they would have to go file a help ticket and say, I need an ingress network that goes from an outside IP address to this VM on that port. And then that then goes to the help desk folks, which then gets escalated to the network folks. They make their changes or ask their questions, and it goes back down. And 6 weeks later, you get your ingress network. Whereas today with vSphere with Tanzu, they're doing a kubectl, get me an ingress network, and it happens immediately because I, as the vSphere admin, have set up the environment for them to be able to go do that.
So it sounds like we're replacing a ticketing system with APIs or
Self-service.
command lines.
Self-service.
Yeah, I can
full
imagine that.
self-service.
Yeah. So I imagine that would be a lot faster. Well, okay. Thank you, Katarina and Mike. That wraps up this episode of the Kubernetes Case Files Commentary. Thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you next time.